This video is brought to you in partnership with the AA. For a great deal on AA car insurance, go to the AA.ie or call 01 674 0443.
Big car for Audi, the brand new Q4 E-TRON. We're getting a first look at it today. And when I say big car for Audi, of course they're well experienced now with the E-TRON SUV, the E-TRON GT, also hybrid versions of their Q5 and Q7. They're also called E-TRON. So if there's an E-TRON on it, chances are there's a battery in it somewhere, but this is a fully electric car. It's the exact same underpinnings as the Skoda Enyaq, the Volkswagen ID.4, all of which I've had first looks on this channel, and even second looks in some cases. You can click links and wait till the end of the video, they're all there. So this car, as you see it, is the equivalent of a sport trim model. And then you go up to S-Line also. This is kind of a German spec car. There's a couple of different grills. There's also this kind of grill that I've filmed back where we've picked up the cars from today. First time, that's totally flush, and all your sensors for the car behind here. That's fully closed. However, down here, the vents do open if you need cooling going on with the car. You get matrix headlights. They will be obviously still cool looking, but at the back, the red strip goes right the way across. You can get up to 21-inch alloy wheels. The standard car comes with 19. Plenty of rubber on the tyres here to make things comfortable. You can get adaptive chassis control, which makes things a bit smoother. These don't have any vents. They're hard plastic, but on S-Line models, they can be different coloured. Same with the arches. You can get them in plastic on the entry-level car. The skirts down the side, well, the kind of skirts, the bit they have stuck on to the door, colour coded on this car, well, colour of some description. Plastic if you don't. They will open out though to keep the backs of your trousers clean when you're getting in and out. It's kind of this tall. I'm not 6 foot. Roof rails, panoramic glass roof, which isn't standard, but you can get. Charging, right? All models of the Q4, doesn't matter what edition you go for, come with 100 kilowatt charging as standard. You can go up to 125, and in fact, with the software update on these cars, it's actually now 110 as standard. That makes all the difference. If you can get faster chargers, you charge your car quicker. And for those of you doing longer journeys, you don't want to be stuck charging. And a range of, well, on the bigger battery, usable, the 76, that will do over 500 kilometers. Terms and conditions apply, weather depending, temperatures. The smaller battery, around about 400, I'd say a little bit less than that. 35 and 40 E-TRON badge, 51 usable, 76 usable kilowatt hour batteries. That's the difference between them. The boot is 525 litres. It's a manual one. On the sport trim above, you will get an electric one. Does make life easier. I would highly recommend it. Charging down here, space for cables there, nicely tucked out of the way. Again, if you go for the more expensive, bigger battery, you can do up to 11 kilowatt charging with your Type 2 cable. It's 7 as standard. But the fast charging options, that is really impressive to have that as standard. Well done there, Audi. 525 litre boot. The overhang in the back and the front is quite small, and I suppose it makes the best use of the outside space because it looks big and sturdy, but also because of things like the transmission tunnel being gone and stuff, the interior space is really, really massive, and the turning circle in the car, very impressive. Doors open wide, not quite as wide as something like the Nissan Qashqai, but you're pretty much there, which makes getting child seats in and out easier. 2 Isofix in the back, climate control in this model. Again, this is a sport one, so kind of middle of the road. Comfortable seats, not S-Line. Really good for the first time ever. Bottle holders are in a different place on the Audi, and like the plastics are used. There's a lot more plastic than you would expect in an Audi, but it's good quality plastic. Also, just down here, drum brakes. You could say it's cost cutting. Audi say it's not that. they will rust because rear discs on electric vehicles don't get used. Your regen's going on with the motor, you've got your front discs and pads, they will rust over time, drum brakes won't. But it's unusual to see an Audi with drum brakes in 2021. That's the reason why though. Rear space, it's very good, very generous. That front passenger seat is very far back, yet I still have loads of leg room. Those doors closing, there's a solid thud. Glass roof doesn't impede in the head space. It does get a little bit tighter back here, but they even have cutouts for taller passengers in the headlining, but it's still very, very acceptable. As I said, leg room, there's tons of it, flat floor, so middle passengers, you have more chance of getting someone with 3 people into the back. 2 Isofix on either side. Do have an armrest with good size cup holders, and actually for once an armrest that isn't pointing down towards the ground. This third middle headrest will block your view a little bit. Back window, not huge. The car doesn't have a reversing camera as standard, so get one. Child locks can be activated through buttons on the driver's instruments on the right hand side. Did I mention the nets in the back of the seats? I love them about Audis. And cutouts on the back of these seats just in case you really did need them. Very pleasant place to sit. Lovely. There's 27 sustainable parts used in the car. Also in the factory where they're made, it's a sustainable plant. So there's no point waffling on about how great and efficient and green your vehicles are if the whole process to get there aren't going to be in place. So it's carbon neutral where the car is made from the ground up. Audi are making much of this centre console bit. It's not quite as good as, let's go to Enyaq in my opinion. Possibly sometimes a little bit even out of reach of a driver unless you've got particularly long arms, but it's a lot better than the Audi 4. It's like as if they've known, okay, let's do something with this. Generally the interior materials, lovely. Brand new steering wheel, flat bottom at the top, flat bottom at the bottom. I like the way it's evolving from the S-line and the steering wheels we've come to know. Colour instrument display is standard. So the virtual cockpit here, you can view your nav on both maps at the same time, both screens, maps on either side. Kind of a mix of high gloss polish and decent kind of textured aluminium looking plastics, high gloss here, 2 USB-C charging, and because of this floating area, there's loads more room to store stuff. Under here is quite small actually, but the cup holders are decent, and certainly down here there's a lot more plastic than you would expect going on in an Audi. These are kind of the standard seats. 3 levels of regen braking that you can control with the flappy paddles here, and your screen is straight out of the A7, A6, A5, everything. And there are physical buttons that click for your climate and your heated seats. So people who don't like screens for aircon, do not worry, you won't have to do that in this car. There's also a little joggy wheel thing for controlling your volume. This slider for your gear selector, very like the Enyaq also. So a really good job. Yeah, a bit more plastic going on here, but certainly no confusion. I'm behind the wheel of a modern Audi sitting behind the Q4. Oh, by the way, the buttons look like haptic buttons, but they do actually click. Another thing that they're kind of saying, if you don't like them on a certain other cousin of ours, you'll get them. Same rear wheel drive setup as its cousins, just over 200 brake horsepower, just over 300 newton meters of torque, 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. Feels very, very similar to the other cars and how it handles, the weight, the steering, maybe slightly more set up with an Audi driver in mind, but I can't say there's any huge differences. As I mentioned, 3 levels of regen. You get that coming up on a screen, and it's not at all one pedal driving, but you can certainly feel it on its most severe setting if you want to recoup some kilometers back in to the battery. I do like where they have these bottle holders, maybe a little bit of padding in there though. May not go amiss because certain bottles are going to rattle. Augmented reality heads-up display, not on this car, but you can get it as an optional extra. It's so futuristic looking. The little blue arrows that point to the direction on your sat nav. You have to see it to experience it. Pushing on then, there is sufficient power never really feels slow, like, but then again, electric cars, they generally don't feel slow. You've got dynamic mode, that's the mode selector is standard in all cars. I've driven too many Audis where the dynamic button actually does something, so here it doesn't do quite as much. The car doesn't squat down, the exhaust doesn't get louder, but things like that does happen in certain models. They've managed again to do what you mightn't think is possible with batteries, and I mean the car doesn't feel light, but you can throw it around a bit. So it's a car that in some ways has something for everybody. First of all, this design, this style, this model of sized vehicle is so popular in Ireland and in many regions in the world, but especially in Ireland. Going to hit the motorway now in a second, see what that does to our range, and then we're going to drop the car back because we just had a couple of hours to kind of get to know it, get up close with it today, and all prices and information, we leave all that at the end of the video and in the description box also. For that real world pickup, that's what you want in the car, and pretty much any electric vehicle will do it, but there's a nice feeling of solidness. This car feels solid, whether you're clunking those doors shut or whatever it is. It feels well made, feels well built and sturdy. Going to get about 5 kilometers out of kilowatt hour. The E-TRON GT with more than double the power was about 3 if you were doing well. Got 118 kilometers. We've got 362 on the range. We're going to see when we get there how much we've used versus actual distance. Cruising now at 100 kilometers an hour. Just going to set that cruise control to on. Road noise seems about right, seems about standard. This kind of bigger size of SUV style vehicle is never going to be the most dynamic when it comes to air passing over it, but it's still a ground up EV, so I'm not saying thought hasn't gone into it, but compared to a lower down, sleeker, maybe something like the E-TRON GT that's just a bit more aerodynamic. Well, the range from what I can see here is pretty much holding steady. It's not getting any worse in terms of battery consumption, and for every kilometer that ticks by in real life, that's give or take a kilometer on the range. Now that is if you stick to 100 kilometers an hour. There's a big difference generally with electric vehicles between 100 and 120, but pretty confident now that's stable. And if it says 358 left in the battery, I'd be quite confident doing about a 300 kilometer journey on a motorway with that sort of range. That's just my experience of driving EVs, where I haven't run into a problem like that. Alright, so I hope that helps you just have a little look around the new Q4 e-tron from Audi, get your head around it. What's it like? What's the inside like? How does it differ between the Enyaq and the ID.4? Remember, same cars underneath, just all with their own little style. And I think interior wise, especially because this isn't even the top of the range one, I'd have to say this has the best interior out of the three. But the Skoda was absolutely gorgeous, but they put a serious amount of extras onto it. If you can forgive some use of harsher plastics, this is most in line with what you would expect in a non-electric version of the car. There is a bit of noise actually just before I say goodbye over the roof, and feels like anyway. But very solid, very comfortable. This car has not surprised me, and I mean that in a good way. It's as I would have expected it to be. Classy, well put together, solidly feeling, and a lot of value for 41 grand. Yes, it will be the entry level, but you're going to have the latest technology, full electric, with an Audi badge on the front for 41 grand. And actually, by today's prices in cars, that's not too bad. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have a comment or a question, that is what the comment section is all about. Oh yeah, that brake pre-sense likes to come on a lot. Better safe than sorry though. I'll talk to you soon.